now on to Season 2. When last we left the X-Files, Brian, Deep Throat had been shot. Scully knew the truth. And Mulder was... I can't really remember how Mulder was. How was he?
He was a bit down. He looked a bit...
He was a bit down.
Yeah, he looked a bit shaky, didn't he? He looked like his...
And the X-Files were cancelled.
Yes.
Disbanded.
That's right.
So that's how last we left it. So we are on to Season 2, Episode 1, which is Little Green Men. Is this a memorable episode, Brian?
This is an episode I actually liked, probably more than I should have done. When way back in the day when I was at the height of my X-Files fandom, and I don't know if it was just the excitement of this show coming back, but yeah, I liked it quite a bit. I'm not sure it's high up on most diehard X-Files favourites list, but yeah, we'll see when we get into it. My question to you is, what was your hope going into this episode?
Well, being a sort of veteran of TV episodes, I kind of knew that one or two things was going to happen. They were either going to correct the ship from episode 1, where they were just going to have them straight back into X-Files straight away, or we're going to have like a runny episodes before they finally click back into the same old formula and routine that we had in Season 1. Obviously we built up the alien sort of whole thematics in the show, and I was hoping that was going to continue. Plenty of monster movies, but I was a little bit worried about the dynamic between Scully and Mulder, because my favourite episodes were Scully-centric, and definitely when both of them were together.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit worried about how it's going to be if they're apart for long.
Okay.
But yeah, watching this one, it was very familiar. I could remember parts of it when I was watching it. So let's just jump straight into the episode, Brian. So it opens, unlike any of the other X-Files episodes, with a sort of showing the Voyager satellite being shot into space, and all the information that it carried on. It's just giving you a sort of brief history of it. And then it kind of moves to an abandoned Puerto Rican, is it a research centre or a listening centre?
Yeah, it's like a satellite receiver, so it picks up. So basically the satellites that have been sent out, if they get activated, then it picks up those messages from them.
And lo and behold, inside this abandoned building, it's suddenly whirrs to life, and it starts playing the sort of back music that will become sort of punctuary throughout this episode that was on the Voyager.
Yeah.
And then we're sort of like into the theme music. So what did you think of the opening? Seeing it again?
Mulder sounds a bit morbid, I gotta say. The tone of his voice doesn't fill me with excitement, because he doesn't.
We're back. Yes.
Yeah, he sounds like he's three sheets to the wind when he's reading this. It piques my curiosity, I think. I think it's intriguing because obviously the setup simply is, look, we sent the Voyager out many years ago with this message for extraterrestrial life. Guess what? Something or someone has received it. That's essentially it. So yeah, it's intriguing enough, I think.
Yeah, I kind of liked it. It's a bit different than any other episode we've seen, and like you said, it's straight back into the mythos of the show with the aliens yet again, and it leaves you in kind of no doubt that this is not a hoax, or it's not duplicitous, or it's not going to be something else. That is kind of aliens right from the off. So I liked it, but there was just something off about it. I couldn't put my finger on it. I don't know what it was. It could have been the monologue that Mulder has, that he said it's kind of morose and downbeat, and it's not the typical Mulder that we're used to or we want. So we go from there, from a downbeat, beaten up Mulder voiceover to an actual downbeat and beating up Mulder and listening to guys just talk nonsense in this undercover surveillance, and he looks bored.
Yeah, absolutely bored, senseless. He's listening to wiretaps. Yeah, not even the kind of folks Quentin Tarantino dialogue can spice up the job that he's on as he listens to these two guys. But although he's got his seeds though, he's got his.
It does have his sunflower seeds, yes. And then so we've kind of caught up with Mulder, and the next scene we move on to Scully, who's teaching students basically about autopsies and that, and then she goes into this really strange, really weird thing about the guy that's on the slab, whose head they're about to cut open. Yeah. You know, and she's all kind of practical and about the facts and that, and then she goes into this. I wonder what he thought.
Yeah, just to talk about his thoughts and his feelings and whether he has a soul. Essentially, whether he has a soul. But this is Scully's default position. So basically, any time the X-Files get axed, and they will be axed many times throughout this series, her default position is to go back to teaching medicine. So there's one line that kind of just. Oh, it's a bit cringy, and it's when this med student who you know has been to extras casting hours has kind of revelled in the fact that she's got a gig on the opening episode of season 2 on the X-Files because at this point, you know, the show was really taking off. It's becoming a real cult treasure. So you can see it written all over this extra's face. It's like, I get a line of dialogue in the X-Files. And that line of dialogue is when she says to Scully, "You seemed a little spooky," and it's just like, oh, cringy. It's just
it is a bit. It is a bit. It's kind of like, and it's something that I've noticed the X-Files having a habit of doing. They tend to force things a little bit more than they should. Yeah. You know, we get the point. You don't need to hammer it home with a sledgehammer.
It all depends who's writing, really. I think when you look at some of the best writers in the X-Files, they do know how to use the art of subtlety, but here it's a little bit forced, and it's the extra may as well be saying, "Hey, Scully, you really miss Mulder, don't you?" Yeah.
It's basically subtlety with a brick. So we move on to the FBI headquarters, and Mulder just walks past Scully, who seems a little bit upset that he doesn't even acknowledge her, even though she tries to acknowledge him, but we can see on his face that it's not the old Mulder we knew and loved, because he's got 5 o'clock shadow.
This is I've been staying up all night thinking about Tombs, 5 o'clock shadow. Yeah.
It's the kind of thought that made that Skid Row Alley and Jersey Devil. You know, how do we make him look dishevelled and worried and kind of stressed out?
5 o'clock
he didn't
shadow. Yeah.
And he goes to his desk and his picture's put down, and when he lifts it up, it's got a post-it note over his sister. And that's obviously a little sign that these two guys have got that they want to talk to each other. Yeah. And then we jump into remember Deep Throat, as we go to the Watergate parking lot. Notorious for that's where Deep Throat met with Steen and Burnhouse. Yeah. And Scully meets Mulder, and they kind of have a covert relationship. Both are feeling frustrated. Mulder seems very lacking and doubtful of Little Green Men, almost. He seems to be poo-pooing his old self.
Yeah, I really like this scene, actually. No matter what else happens in the episode, this scene is really good. Just the interplay between them, and Mulder tells of this story about this guy called George Hale who built this huge telescope, and he did it because, well, according to him, these little green men, these aliens, came in through his window one night and told him to build it. And then he says that, I just wonder if my whole life I've just been seeing little green men, and that's kind of his fear. It's just like, is that fear now creeping in that actually has his life's work, or the thing that he's certainly devoted his life to in the last few years, just been worthless? Has it been a dog chasing cars, so to speak? And Scully offers.
And you just. On you go.
Yeah, so Scully offers the hopeful line of, well, you know what? At least George Hale got the telescope built. So whether he saw Little Green Men or not, he accomplished something great. So yeah, that's a nice exchange between the two, I think.
And I'm just waiting for Scully to break character and go, look, you think it's a figment of your imagination? I bloody held one in the last episode, Mulder.
Yeah.
Had it in my handbag and everything. But she doesn't. So then we jump back to this old adage, and already this just annoys me. Anything with the sister seems to be just. It pushes me back to, is it Conduit?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why. But as soon as I hear sister, I like this scene, but I flash back to Conduit, and I'm just like, ugh, don't touch that picture, folks. So it's 1973. This young Fox and his sister, they're having an argument, and then the fuse goes, and it's quite a good scene. The lights, things start to shake, lights flash, an alien appears at the door, and his sister kind of hovers and floats out the window, or through the window, and it's very good. It's a very good scene. I like it. What do you think of this one?
It is a good scene, but it does actually contradict the hypnosis tapes from Conduit, because events don't quite happen in the way that we hear Mulder talking about them on those hypnosis tapes. I can't remember what the contradictions are, but I just remember this being quite a thing amongst some people in the X-Files community who were like, hey, hang on, that doesn't add up. So
it looks good. It's a good scene, but the one thing I don't like about it is it would have been better is a sort of fractured memory from Mulder. You know, actually showing you something kind of steals a little bit of his power away from it, almost. But that's just my own personal opinion of that.
Yeah, maybe film it like so you don't quite know what's going on, but you get an inkling of what's going on. Or...
I mean, it's a dream, and dreams aren't sequential or make sense. You know, it should have been like abstract images and kind of sort of like momentary glimpses of things that don't really add up but look kind of freaky. But you know, I still like the scene, and it's a product of its time, and TV at the time was less than what we're getting here in the X-Files.
Yeah.
So I do still quite like that scene.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the explanations people offer up for why there are those contradictions, that this is in fact a dream, and even the hypnosis thing. I mean, we said back in Conduit when we were discussing it that actually hypnosis is unreliable, and you know.
So Mulder wakes from this nightmare, and the weirdest thing is his front door just opens up and there's a guy standing there just going like, we're going to the hill.
Yeah.
You know, Mulder's nowhere near that front door. And you think a conspiracy nut like Mulder, who thinks he's always been watched and that, would have like severe locks on that thing. So this guy takes him to Senator Matheson, who's listening to back the first track on the Voyager record that gets sent up.
Yeah.
And then they have a little moment, a little chit-chat, and then things turn covert when the senator writes a little note saying they may be listening, and we're back to the old conspiracy that we like in the X-Files, where trust no one is no more apparent in this scene. Yeah,
there's also a nice in-joke there for David Duchovny fans, because when he gets the track wrong, because Matheson asks him what track it is, or he takes a wild stab in the dark at it anyway, and he says it's a good job it wasn't a double jeopardy question, and that line was thrown in there because David Duchovny did actually play on the game show Double Jeopardy, and he got the double jeopardy question wrong. So
there you go, a little bit of trivia.
But Matheson has apparently been an ally of Mulder's, which is news to us. He points Mulder in the direction of the radio telescope at Arecibo that may have made contact. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think about the fact that we're only just being introduced to this guy as an ally?
Yeah, it feels out of place. I don't know if the guy's going to return in future episodes, but it feels almost a little bit forced, a little bit replacing of Deep Throat already, which that's going to come later on in the episode.
Yeah.
But it feels odd that he doesn't have all these allies at the one time. There only seems to be one contacting him at a time almost. And I don't know if I'm just reading into it, but I'm starting to wonder if there's a secret society almost, or a people who believe or who want the truth out there within the FBI or within the government, and are trying to help Mulder. I could be making excuses for it. I don't know. I don't think I particularly like this guy either.
Yeah, he comes across as a little bit snidey, doesn't he? He comes, I think it's the way that the actor plays him. You can't help but mistrust this guy.
So we go through there, and we go to a tape interview with Scully as Skinner and the smoking man listen to it. Where they're asking about Mulder. And if she knows where he is and things like that. And it's again, we're reintroduced to Skinner. He's back in a big style in this episode, and the smoking man is quite prevalent as well.
Yeah, my favourite moment in this scene is when Skinner takes away smoking man's cigarette packet and he just nods at the sign that, no smoking. So it's kind of like a screw you, and it gets us a little bit on Skinner's side, because the last time we saw him we didn't really know how to take him. Here I think more of that kind of professionalism is starting to come out, where you get the sense that this guy just wants to be just wants to do his job. I don't really want to take sides. So just that little playful moment where he steals Cancerman's cigarettes is quite amusing.
And then we jump straight to Mulder in Puerto Rico at the radio receiver base, and he's scrambling up the hulls, just trying to get to the receiver. He looks rather sweaty, and it looks pretty warm.
Yeah. We get to Scully going to his apartment to search for clues. Yeah.
And it's one of the best answer machine messages ever.
Yeah.
The woman is so just calm and to the point. You are a pig. And Mulder kind of Scully hacks into Mulder's PC.
Yeah.
I think it's the third guess.
Yeah, but I've really got to question her choices of passwords. Maybe not the second two, although it's a pretty damn good guess to get Trust No on. It's pretty obscure. But that first guess that she has a crack at, spooky. Spooky. That's seriously, Scully. You think Mulder would use the name that people used to bully him with as his password? That'd be like every child in school who gets bullied, who gets called a nickname, using that nickname as their password.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that, but it's kind of funny when you mention it.
And then the dumbest, the dumbest agents in the world show up.
Oh yeah. She prints something off, and it falls to the floor, and the two agents come in,
showing that she has no fish feeding skills whatsoever.
Yeah, and one picks up the sheet of information and he's like, "Hey, what's this?" And the other guy's like, "It's a printer test page, I think. Just spin it."
Oh, sharpest tools in the box, right there.
Yeah, and Scully with her feeding the fish, saying she's going to feed the fish, and she opens the tub, deliberately spilling it, which was quite a nice little touch. And then she picks up the paper and kind of puts the fish food in it, and then sticks it up her sleeve, her rather baggy wizard sleeve type thing.
Yes, to hide the fact that she's pregnant.
So where do we go from there?
Well, Mulder finds Jorge. So we go back to Mulder at the Arecibo telescope, and he runs into this guy called Jorge, who tries to tell him what he has seen, but can't speak English. So he draws it instead. And we get an image
Yeah.
not unlike the one from Jersey Devil.
Yeah, but you can. This one seems more forgiving.
Yeah,
I suppose.
It makes more sense, I think. It makes more sense.
Yeah. Yep. So we've met Jorge. He's obviously pointed to the sky and said aliens, and you're supposed to get all kind of trembly, and Mulder's on the right track here.
I do like,
So we jump back-
actually, I do like that this guy can't speak English. I like this, like we don't understand what he's saying, and it kind of it puts us there into that situation, into Mulder's shoes, you know, being in that situation and being confronted with this guy and not being able to understand him. I think that adds something of realism, I think.
Yeah. So we jump back to the Naval Observatory in DC, where Scully shows a guy the printout, and he's all super excited. It's the best printer's test page he has ever seen.
It's the best evidence for extraterrestrial life.
Yeah, he can't tell where it came from at all.
Sorry, yeah, he says it reminds him of the WOW signal, in which somebody once received a signal that at that point was probably the best evidence they had for extraterrestrial life, and he got so excited that he wrote "wow" in the margin.
Yeah. God, that guy was an animal. So we have Scully kind of going through airline manifestos looking for an alter alias for Mulder, which is quite clever. And then we jump back to Mulder and Jorge in Puerto Rico. A tape recorder comes to life and its back hit against, and then there's a high-pitched frequency. Jorge runs away, and Mulder goes after him and finds him frozen in fear.
Yeah,
Which I like. I like
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's quite a startling image.
it is. Yeah, just like not seeing what he's seeing, but just seeing the aftermath of it, because it allows your mind to run wild, I guess, with what could have possibly done that. And he's a likable guy as well. You know, he's not one of them characters that pops up who's a douchebag and you kind of want to see something happen to him. He's just this random nice dude who he's very scared. So to see him kind of be killed like that, it's quite frightening.
One of the things I like about this scene, and it's before anything happens, is when they're just pottering about the room and Mulder's looking at stuff and Jorge walks over and pushes a button and Mulder just turns around and says, don't touch that red button, knowing full well that he doesn't understand English. and it's just that you feel as if these two guys are just both just comfortable around each other, even though there's a language barrier.
Yeah.
They've had a little bit of time together and they're just comfortable. I like that. It was a nice little touch.
Yeah. So Scully has found a name in the manifests. It's George Hale, which is the chap that Mulder talked about with the little green men coming into his window. So that's how she knows who the passenger really is. It's not George Hale, it's Mulder.
Yeah. And that begs the question, how did he get all the ID to go with that to fly out? Because he's leaving the country, going to another country, isn't he? So he'd need to have a passport. And
Lone gunmen.
Okay, right. We'll go with that.
Yeah.
So Scully is at the airport and she's constantly watching and is being followed. She calls Fox and leaves a number of a flight on the answer machine. And then almost immediately, the two agents that are following her get a call, at which point she can kind of run away from them and they think she knows where she is heading.
Yeah. She's a crafty bugger.
Yeah, she's got quite a cunning ruse here. I quite like this. Because at first, when she picks up the phone, and I thought she's just giving them a wild goose chase.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me that she was giving them like a flight number, which I thought was brilliant. Brilliant idea.
Yeah, it reminds me of the moment in EBE when both Mulder and Scully have to lose different people, and Scully's clearly better at it than Mulder is.
Yeah. So we jump back to Puerto Rico again, and Mulder has dragged Jorge's body back to the observatory, and he's no longer frozen in the one place. He's just lying flat on the table.
Yeah. And
And Mulder starts to kind of do like a analysing the body, the way it lies. He's making a documentation of the scene in case anything happens to the body. But he refers a lot to on the tape as if he's talking directly to Scully.
Yeah.
It makes you feel like he's kind of missing his partner.
Yeah, it's a very personal message, is it? Sorry, excuse me. It's a very personal message because he tells her through this cassette that he trusts her more than himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a few things in this conversation that I quite like. I like the fact that he says, again, nothing but evidence, and again, no evidence at all.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of self-doubt, and he says, like, they're taking you away from me.
Mm.
You know, that this seems to be the thing that is kind of hurt him the most.
Yeah. I think
passion.
this is the main thing about this episode. I think it really is. I mean, like if you're coming into the X-Files here, which presumably many people did, you know, because a lot of people didn't watch the first series, but after all the hype, they came back and watched the second. So they started with this episode essentially. So this episode does have a lot of work to do to kind of, you know, hook those new audience members. And they do it, I think, by highlighting the strength of this relationship between Mulder and Scully, highlighting just how much Mulder needs Scully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're right there. And it kind of, for the people that are fans of the show, it kind of shows you as well that he's still got his passion, his hunt for the truth, but without Scully by his side, it's not as rewarding, it's not as fulfilling as it once was.
No.
And you know, it's a nice little touch. And then we get the lights going again.
They're here.
They're most definitely here. And this is the moment where, faced with seeing what he's been searching for, he decides to run and hide. Yeah, which is a really nice idea about it. You know, he'd rather, I don't know, be safe than know. And this is the first time we've ever kind of seen this.
Well, I feel like it's Mulder regressing. I feel like Mulder's going back to the young boy again, because obviously when we saw him in the flashback earlier on, he does kind of freeze up a bit. He goes for the gun on the top of the cabinet, and then when the thing comes through the door, he just kind of freezes, doesn't he? And I feel like that's kind of what this scene is saying, is that he's in this moment he does regress back to that young boy who saw his sister get abducted.
Yeah, it's got the cool thing with the door opening itself, and then him firing the gun, but nothing's going off, and he's checking the chamber and all that, and then the sort of white light engulfs him, and he's kind of unconscious, I think. From there.
So he wakes up to Scully. Scully finds Mulder unconscious, and an assault squad arrive.
Yes.
Mulder tries to gather what evidence he can, but Scully's kind of like, you know, the evidence is going to be no use to you if you're dead, so they basically just hightail it out of there. And there's quite a nice little car chase that ensues, I think.
Yes, now, they leave the place to jump into Scully's car. Why didn't Mulder take a car there in the first place? He trekked up all these hills and things.
Well, he hitchhiked, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because he had to go there under his own steam, so he couldn't hire a car without people tracking him. Whereas,
but he was using false ID.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess. But I just think it's because Scully is there, I guess, under FBI dime. I would imagine she's probably used her FBI credentials to hire cars or whatever, whereas he's on his own, basically. I don't know. That's a shot in the dark.
I don't even know why I got hung up on it myself, Brian, but it's something that just popped out of my head. But like you said, it's a nice car chase. And there is a little bit of weight to it. You know, nothing's really going to happen to them, but yet still these guys seem to be hunting them down almost. But they get away, and then we jump back to Skinner and the smoking man.
Yeah. Skinner chews out Mulder for abandoning his post.
Yeah.
But when
Now, you alluded to this part in a previous episode. This is one of your favourite lines that Skinner says.
Did I? Oh no, not here. This is so it's quite a way off before we get to that line. That's at the end of this season, I think.
Oh right.
Oh well,
okay,
beginning of season 3 actually. But,
I thought it was this when he tells the smoking man to get the hell out.
No, it's this is the start of it. I think this is really where we start to see that actually, while Skinner isn't necessarily on Mulder's side at this point, he's not on Cancerman's side either. He's his own man, and he wants to show that. So that makes us trust him a bit, I think. But yeah, it's still a nice moment when he tells him to get the hell out.
Yes. And it's a kind of misdirect as well, because you think he's talking to Mulder, and then it just kind of the camera pans a little bit to the smoking man, and you realise it's him that's to get the hell out.
Yeah, definitely. So
then we just kind of have Mulder and Scully listening to the tape, but it's blank.
Yeah.
And Mulder says, "Well, at least I still have my work," and then he throws in, "and I still have you."
Yeah. Aww.
Yeah, it's a lovely little moment, isn't it?
It's nice.
It's a hallmark moment.
That is a hallmark moment, yeah.
And Mulder goes back to listening, but with a little bit of a renewed vigour, I would say.
Yeah.
And there we have it. We're into season 2, episode 1 done.
So what do you take away from this episode then? What sum it up basically? How do you feel about it?
I feel as if it's almost like a cold reboot. Because it's bringing Skinner into it, is reassessing his level where he stands. It's showing how Mulder and Scully really need each other, which I feel kind of robs Mulder of his passion, because a lot of the time during the first season he would go off alone and chase these things, and he would part ways with Scully, whereas now it seems that he's only fully complete when Scully is around him. Yeah,
but I think the difference there is that when he would go off without Scully, it's because he knew she was still there, and it's like, you know, she hadn't been taken away from him. He had that security, that safety of knowing that he could go back, grab her, bring her into the action. Also, again, going back to the support he had, financially speaking, because, you know, everything would go on the FBI accounts. You know, he didn't have to fund all of his operations. Whereas now, if he wants to go off chasing little green men, that has to be off his own back. He can't just, you know, hire a car under the FBI credentials.
And then there's even a replacement for Deep Throat. Where you feel as if that's what's going to be with Senator Matheson.
Yeah.
And you feel as if it's trying to get all the pieces back into place from where they dispersed them all at the end of season 1. I like this episode. I don't think it's great in the long run. I think the sort of receiver studio set is really funky looking, because it doesn't look realistic.
Yeah, it don't quite mesh up with the outside footage, does it? When they have the...
No, but I think it fits with the scenes that are in there, because they're kind of alien abduction, attacking or being there scenes. It creates that kind of odd looking about it. On a set. I do like it. I like the fact that you have Smoking Man almost instantaneously put into the series again, and we've seen him a couple of times, so we know he's up to no good. Skinner, like we say, kind of sort of cold reboots that character. You know, he is neither for nor against Mulder at this moment. Overall, I kind of dithered on a score for this one, Brian. I was up and I was down. I went as high as a 4 at one point.
Alright.
But I think I'm going to hold it at a 3.
Okay.
It's good to get back into it. The first episodes are always kind of hard ones to hit.
Yeah.
And I'm curious as to where the season's going to go from here.
Yeah. I like I say, I did used to really like this episode, and I think that there are scenes in here that pop out at me that kind of remind me why I liked this episode so much. And it is those scenes with Mulder and Scully, and even the scenes where they're not necessarily together, but they're talking about the other person, or they're defending the other person, or they're working in order to protect the other person. And it does really cement their relationship. You know, they were torn apart at the end of the first season, and we see here just how much they feel that they need each other. And I like that. I like the way they go about it. I'm not particularly engaged with the whole Arecibo telescope storyline. I could care less about that, to be honest. But the relationship really does lift it up, and I do like Skinner here as well. He's becoming more than just a bureaucrat at the FBI. He's becoming a player, so to speak. He's becoming a main player within the cast of characters in this series, and they're clearly now pushing Cancerman from this point on as the main villain. You know, we've not really had a big main villain in this show, but given the glimpses we've had of him a little bit in the first season, and the fact that he's back here now in a pretty big way, it kind of says to us, this is our villain. And I do think that anyone coming into this series from this episode, I think that is why it, as you say, feels like a cold reboot. I think it was necessary to do that. Given the success of the first series, I think if people had come in and they didn't kind of set it up that way, then I think they would have lost people before they began. So yeah, I think it's mostly well handled. Like I say, character stuff is better than the actual story stuff, but I like it enough to give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah. Okay, so next episode will be The Host. This is the one episode that I have a strong memory of. Yeah. So is this a memorable one in the X-Files lore?
Well, you remember it, so it's disgusting. I'll say that much. And it's also worth noting.
Curiosity with that.
Well, yeah. It's also worth noting that the man who plays the villain of that particular episode will go on to become one of the best writers on the show.
Hey, okie dokie. Well, thanks for coming back to our inaugural episode of Season 2. We look forward to continuing this season. We've had a great time Season 1. We'll break back into it again. We'll see you next time on the X-Files Revisited.